Hey guys, I'm Ronella Hernandez, and today I'm at the Cardano Summit in Dubai with Web3 TV. Right sitting here next to me is Frederik, who is the CEO of the Cardano Foundation. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. I wanted to learn about how it's going today at the conference. What do you think so far? What's the mission of the summit today?
Well, the mission of the summit is about three pillars. One is education, to really sort of bring the best people in the industry together around third generation blockchains. That part is going tremendously well. There's been some really good panels around multi-party computation, CK knowledge, around staking, around NFTs, different business models, but also industry appliances. So I think the education part is really rocking it, and I see a lot of people getting inspired. The other part is operational resilience. So earlier today was a very long panel around operational resilience. And what's really truly unique is that Cardano actually have an uptime of over 2,000 days, even though we dramatically changed the code. And we also the blockchain who deploys the most code changes of all the large blockchains.
The most code changes.
Most code changes.
So is that what you mean by resilient, that it's able to withstand the most code changes?
Yes. So if you kind of think about it, right? So Bitcoin is also up there with more than 2,000 days, but they haven't done any dramatic code changes. What is with Cardano is that we keep actually changing the airplane while we are flying it. So we have, over 1,000.
Is that a good thing? That sounds dangerous.
Well, it's one of the things you have to be aware of with distributed architecture, right? You cannot just sort of flip a switch and restart it whenever you want, right? So we have over 3,000 stake pool operators who continuously, operate Cardano and keep this running. And at the same time, we have an architecture which means that we can continuously adjust the market to product feasibility as we see more and more use cases applies. So I think this is kind of truly unique, but also a little bit scary.
Okay. Now I understand that the Cardano ecosystem has 3 prongs to its governance, and that the foundation is one of them. So could you explain the role of the Cardano Foundation within the greater ecosystem?
Yes. So the Cardano Foundation is a Swiss non-profit foundation, and we look at the 10 to 20 year timeline. We look at the general adoption of third generation blockchains across, many years. Now, we don't own the blockchain. We haven't produced the blockchain. We don't own the monetary policy and those kind of things. And we're also not like the special grant authority in there. We just give money away. All of that is already, running in Cardano. It's already decentralized and so forth. So what we really look at is the operational resilience, disaster recovery, the predictability of the protocol. We really look at the education, and we look at the adoption at large scale. So we enable adoption. We don't look at one single use case. And that's very special. The other way of looking at it is we do things nobody want to do, right? So
like what?
Yeah, think about it. So if it costs a lot of money, you can't really make a profit on it, or you might go to jail by doing it. We do it, right? So
You're not scared of the consequences.
Yeah, well, a bit, but so I speak to regulators, I speak to policymakers, I'm discussing MiCA 1, MiCA 2. We do RegTech plays to enable people to really truly understand, what is the difference between Cardano and others in the aspect of the upcoming regulation. Those kind of things is not something you can sort of build a fintech model on top of it and stuff like that, right? So we do some of these sort of less wanted things, which has to be done in a public infrastructure to ensure that there's a good flow and the city is safe.
All right. Now I want to ask a little bit more about you personally. On your Twitter bio, or formerly Twitter, now X bio, you say that you are a public blockchain believer, a fintech evangelist, and a digital explorer. Can you go into those and what those mean exactly?
Yeah. So in my journey towards blockchains, I basically done a few different things. And when I worked for one of the large big 4 companies, I basically built a blockchain lab for that company. And most of the companies, they wanted permission blockchains, private permission blockchains, because it was something they could control. It had the ability to mitigate the counterparty risk. There was a lot of sort of good ads on it. And it very clearly dawned on me that this is not scalable. It does not solve the blockchain problems we are set out to solve. And therefore, I went back to basics, to where Ethereum and Bitcoin really started, and looked at what is it that's so unique about public permissionless blockchains. And I think one of the things that's so unique is you do not need an official identity. You don't need to have an approval process. You can be one of the 1 to 2 billion people who don't have a national identity, and you now have access to the same level of technology as we take as granted in the Western world.
But don't we want a digital identity?
Of course, but who's going to make that? And who's going to force the interoperability about that? What we've seen across nation states is that some nation states says, this is the digital identity, and they force that out to everybody. But then again, some people don't get it, right? Refugees, for instance, and we see a spike in refugees at the moment. Their digital identities are ripped away, right?
So how can blockchain aid these types of humanitarian crises and refugees crises?
So what we do, for instance, with United Nations Humanitarian Crisis Organization is that we allowed them and taught them to build basically a pool. It's called a stake pool operator. So they participate in the security of the Cardano network. This can be used for fundraising. This can be used to NFT drops. This can be used for governance. So if you are a small, you want to give a grant to some refugees, you now have a digital track between the grant you're giving into the UNHCR, which means they can give you the option that you can say, oh, I want to go a little bit more right, or I want to focus on South America, or I want to do certain things. So you create a digital tie, which is not covered by the traditional EU GDPR and data protection, because they're not hosting and managing your identity, but they have a way to communicate directly through you through that digital bond. And this opens up complete new business models for the United Nations Humanitarian Crisis Organization, for instance, which is, by the way, also here today.
Yes. Okay, that's a very interesting use case and not one that's talked about enough, I think. But specifically with Cardano, I do want to ask how you would rate its community. From what I've gathered today, speaking to so many other exhibitors and attendees, people love Cardano and the ecosystem. So how would you describe the Cardano community?
I really tried to do that a long time. And I think what I want to say is that what's truly unique about Cardano and the Cardano community is that the Cardano community does not come together on let's get rich fast. They don't come together because they love the technology. They come together because they've seen that there is a technology stack here which is equitable and has the ability to bring the world together. So what really ties the Cardano community together is this vision, this opportunity to make a difference in the world. And I think that's very unique to Cardano compared to other blockchains where very frequently it's a short-term incentive or it's a very specific technical feature which makes people excited.
All right, so how do you envision that future may be enabled by public blockchains, including Cardano? How would you imagine using blockchain technologies, Web3 elements in your everyday life? Like if you wake up tomorrow morning and it's a blockchain-enabled world, what would be the first thing you do?
I think, first of all, you won't notice the blockchain anymore.
Okay.
So blockchain becomes irrelevant. It becomes sort of like the air we breathe. We take it for granted. But if you put your hand over your mouth after a couple of seconds, you really want that air, right? So blockchain sort of becomes a part of the daily infrastructure we take benefits from. We reap the benefits and the value from it, but all of us doesn't have to understand it. But what it really does is it changes the asymmetry among businesses and partnerships. And what I mean about that is today, there is a few companies and there's a few nation states who just gets bigger and more powerful all the time. And what blockchain really does is enables you to do partnerships with them on equal footing. So you can actually work with Big Brother and have collaborations with them on equal rules. And I think that's going to enable a growth in GDP. It's going to enable a growth in enabling human resources across the globe. And it's going to create a platform where the incentives are changed from everything is free to everything suddenly costs something, which also means that everything can be cost extracted.
Okay, work with Big Brother. That's an interesting notion. All right, now I'm gonna ask a few more what if questions or imaginative questions, all right? So let's say you had to create a time capsule, like when you bury something in the ground and you open it up a few years later. If you had to create a Web3 related time capsule and wait 10 years to dig it out of the ground, what items or what information would you put in there for your future self or future generations?
Well, in a weird way, the Cardano blockchain is a time capsule. So everything which has happened on the Cardano blockchains for the last 2,000 days plus and counting is a time capsule which you cannot destroy, you cannot take down, right? the decentralization is so good. So I would just hope that people have the ability to really harvest the metadata more and put more data on chain. I think what we need to do is we need to really think about what is actually possible to put on chain, including governance, including history. And what we see, for instance, today is that more books are coming on, like the full content of the book. I would like to see more journalism, like in blocks, so basically locked on the blockchain, so we can start up also to harvest observation across time.
Like articles and
videos, articles and videos like we're doing right now.
Okay.
Because I think based on that, we can verify that this actually happened. And what we have with Web 2 today is that the cost of misinformation is 0, but the cost of removing that is astronomical. And what you do, for instance, as a journalist is verified. It has sort of codes of ethics and stuff like that. So putting more of that on blockchain will enable the technical capsule will already exist to be much more valuable. And I think we can learn much more about what happened. It is very likely, I think, that, we have, previous civilizations where we cannot take their learnings because there was no time capsule. But now we have the technology for it.
Definitely. All right, I like that. I agree with you too about journalists and the press. All right, one more question. If you could create an NFT to memorialize a moment or a memory in your lifetime, what moment would that be and why would you choose to create an NFT of it?
I think you got me on that one, huh?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, no, that's really tough. I think what I would probably do is I would create an NFT which captures not just a picture of special moments in my life, and some of those moments has been together with friends and family, and it's been tough times and jolly times, but every one of us has these special moments. And what I would do is I would probably enable sound and scent, because sometimes when you smell something or you have a certain sound, you're brought back somewhere. And the way the brain works is that you have this feeling, you nearly have it on the tongue of your tip of your tongue, right? And you're like, oh, this was this moment. But if I could take out sort of that picture and maybe add the scent or some of the missing components, I might sort of get down into memory lane and get that much more visual than I have today.
All right, I like that answer a lot. All right, I think that's all my questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for coming one more time.
Thank you, Frederik.